Yo, 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 what is up, guys? It's Cone, back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer. Game 1 of the second round of this year's NBA playoffs just finished up. Bucks versus Nets, Game 1, with the Nets taking a 115-107 lead in a game where they really dominated in the second half of this game, especially in that third quarter. It was kind of close to start out, it was kind of back and forth, and it was really close at the half, but really in that third quarter and the rest of the game, the Nets really just kind of took over in this one. And it's definitely not the start the Bucks wanted. I'm sure the Bucks wanted to come out and take this game. They had been resting for a little while, more than the Nets had been resting, and I'm sure they were hoping that they could catch the Nets off guard, catch the Nets kind of tired, and try and take this game. Unfortunately, it did not at all go to that plan for them, and really, this game was without James Harden too. James Harden, he officially played in this game, but he played 30 seconds. James Harden left in the first 30 seconds of this game with a hamstring injury. He had been dealing with that earlier in the season. It was why he didn't play to finish out the regular season, and now it looks like it's popping back up. I'm really hoping that it's nothing too serious. I saw some Twitter report that he was okay, or that he's at least good enough to be running on a treadmill, which should be a good sign. I'm hoping that that's actually a legitimate source. I'm going to be honest, I didn't look too much into it, but keeping my fingers crossed, really praying that James Harden is okay, because I want to see both of these teams at about as full of strength as they possibly can be at this point. I want to see them go at each other at full strength, and James Harden is one of the most entertaining players in the entire league to watch, so of course I want to see him in this game. But overall, without James Harden, getting an 8-point win like this, a win where the Nets dominated most of this game, is exactly what Steve Nash and the Nets it's probably all they could have hoped for in this one. Obviously, they would like to have Harden back, but if you're going to have to play without Harden, this is the way they wanted to go. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving were phenomenal. Kyrie Irving was a bit inefficient, but overall, he played a great game. Kyrie had 25, 5, and 8 assists. He was great playmaking. Kevin Durant had 29, 10 rebounds, and 3 assists. He was dominant as well. Also, those two combined played for 85 minutes, with Kyrie playing 45 and Kevin Durant playing 40, which are big, big minutes. It's what you kind of have to do in the playoffs. These two guys have been resting a lot of the season. Both of them had kind of their issues throughout the year. Kyrie took some personal time off, and Kevin Durant dealt with that injury to his leg, and so both of them have kind of missed some time. So they've kind of been saving it up a little bit for the playoffs. They were ready to go, and really that minute discrepancy is part of why the Bucks lost this game. Giannis Antetokounmpo played for 35 minutes in this game, and while that's not too bad, with how good he was, dropping 34, 11, and 4 on really high efficiency, he's got to play more. Giannis should be playing near 40 minutes, if not 40 plus minutes, in every single one of these games, especially in this one. The biggest criticism a lot of people had of Mike Budenholzer last playoffs when they lost to the Heat was his unwillingness to play his stars. When they were down 3-1 to the Heat, Giannis would play, or even before that in the first couple games, Giannis would play 32 minutes. He played it all season, and given the thought process is if he plays less minutes in the regular season, he should be more ready for the playoffs, right? No, not for Mike Budenholzer. He kept playing Giannis 33, 34 minutes, and it wasn't enough time. Something that, for example, the Cavaliers did with LeBron James on their team is they would sit LeBron at the end of the quarter, use a timeout to get him out of the game, take about that 60-second timeout, waste a little bit of time before the start of the next quarter, and then he would come back in. He would use the opportunity to get a 4 or 5 minute rest by using a timeout, taking that in-between quarters break, and then heading back into the game. That's something that Mike Budenholzer should try. Giannis should be doing anything but he shouldn't be taking these 5-6 minute breaks. It's too much time. When you have the opportunity to steal a game from the Nets like this without James Harden, Giannis should have played 43, 44 minutes in this game. Because if you get this win, it's huge. You take home court advantage away from them, and you secure a win when they don't have one of their most impactful players. James Harden is a guy that I've been saying for the better half of this season that James Harden is the most impactful player to this team. So you can't afford to lose a game without him. This was a big loss for the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis played incredible, but he should have played more minutes. Chris Middleton played more minutes, and Chris Middleton wasn't very good tonight. He was really inefficient from the field, and that was one of their biggest issues why they lost. Him and Jrue Holiday were both really inefficient. Jrue Holiday had a bit of a better game. He had 17, 9, and 6, but like I said, he was inefficient. But Chris Middleton was less efficient and had less playmaking to go with it. He did have 13 rebounds, but ultimately, it just wasn't enough from him. They need better from Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton, when I dropped my playoff preview video earlier today, about 3 hours ago or so, I said that Chris Middleton was going to be super important in this series because he had the potential to do what Jason Tatum did to the Nets. I said in that video as well that Chris Middleton isn't quite Jason Tatum, but he has that wing scorer build that Tatum has. He can hit shots from the mid-range. He can hit shots from inside. He can stretch out to the three-point line, way even beyond the three-point line. He can take really tough contested shots, as we saw in the Miami Heat series where he beat the Heat game 1 with that game winner contested in the mid-range. He's shown the ability to make these really tough buckets, which sometimes you need in the playoffs. And so Chris Middleton, they can't afford for him to have a terrible game like this. They need him to be on his A game every single night, especially when Giannis is putting up numbers like he did tonight. And I expect Giannis to keep putting those numbers up all series because the Nets really don't have an answer for him. I really don't think Blake Griffin, who giving him credit, had a great game offensively tonight. I really don't think he's the answer for them at center. I think Nick Claxton needs to play a little bit more minutes, and I think going forward he probably will. I think Blake Griffin plays great minutes at the 4. It's just, I think it might be a little too much to play him at the 5, at least not in extended periods. Maybe if Giannis is off the court or Brook Lopez is off the court, that can be in consideration. But to start this game, they were exploiting the hell out of Blake Griffin at that center position, and it's when the Bucks started to miss shots and the Nets really started to heat up that kind of got neutralized. It really didn't matter. That was another really big story in this game. The Bucks could not hit a 3 to save their lives. I have the stats pulled up over here. The Bucks shot 6 for 30. From 3. 6 for 30 from 3. It's ridiculous. You can't have that happening. And I don't think it's going to keep happening. A lot of people are really overreacting to this game, saying that the series is already over because the Bucks lost a game to without James Harden. I know that's not necessarily a good sign if they're losing to the Nets without Harden, who, like I said, I think is one of the most, if not the most impactful players on this entire team. But the series isn't over. It's game 1 in a 7-game series, potentially. There's a reason it's best of 7 and not just win or go home in that first game. Because dynamics shift, coaches make adjustments, and players learn how to play against different teams. I think the Bucks are going to come back and win next game. I think they do end up tying the series up. If not now, then they'll maybe tie it up 2-2 or something like that. But I think the Bucks are going to come back with a punch. Maybe I'm just being blindly optimistic that Mike Budenholzer can make these adjustments. Mike Budenholzer is a coach that has been criticized constantly, by me even. I've talked about Mike Budenholzer in the past. Now, I wasn't making these YouTube videos last season during the bubble when Mike Budenholzer's team got knocked out in the second round. But if I did, I would have ranted about him as a coach in that series. He was a guy that I could have seen getting fired this past offseason for the way that he and his team performed in that second round. They were not ready for the Heat at all. He refused to adjust, and he refused to play his starters more minutes. The whole reason, like I said, that you play your starters less minutes in the regular season is to play them more in the playoffs, and he just didn't do that. And so this is his opportunity right now, going up against a first-year coach with a really talented roster to show what kind of adjustments he can make. If they go into Game 2 looking the exact same, I'd be shocked, because they can't do that. When you lose a game like this, you have to make big adjustments. And this is the test for Budenholzer. If they lose in this series and he doesn't make any major adjustments, they could lose in this series theoretically. It's the Nets. They're a really good team. But I think, honestly, if they lose in this series, he's gone. Especially if they go out in quick fashion. And if he doesn't make some adjustments and some of the guys on this Milwaukee team don't step up, it's possible they could go out quick. PJ Tucker had a good beginning of the game, but he struggled the rest of the game. They need guys like Bryn Forbes, Pat Connaughton, Bobby Portis to step up. Jeff Teague played in this game. I don't really know why. He played 14 minutes. He had 2 points. I think they went too far into their bench. They should have played their starters more. In the playoffs, teams typically have like an 8-man rotation. And if your 8-man rotation is Brook Lopez, Jrue Holiday, Chris Middleton, Giannis, PJ Tucker, Bryn Forbes, Pat Connaughton, Bobby Portis, that's a good 8. You really don't need to go beyond that. Maybe in like certain situations, you could bring in like a Thanasis if you need like a defensive stop or something like that, or just bring in Jeff Teague if you need to foul someone at some point. But I don't see a point to bring in a lot more than those 8 guys. On the contrary, what the Nets did tonight is this is what their lineup looked like. They played 35. Blake Griffin played 35 minutes. Kyrie played 45. Kevin Durant played 40. Joe Harris played 34. The only reason they went to a 9-man bench was because James Harden got hurt. Mike James played 30 minutes tonight, and he had 12, 7, and 3. He was great tonight. Bruce Brown had some great minutes. Nick Claxton had beautiful minutes. Nick Claxton is a player I really like and someone that I think is going to be important in this series. The only reason that anyone outside of like those top 8 guys played more minutes is because James Harden went out. So the Nets were going to do it. Steve Nash in his first playoff series was like, okay, I'm going to go to like an 8-man rotation if James Harden had played. Otherwise, I'll go to a 9-man, and it's like a limited 9-man. Like Landry Shamet played 12 minutes. The Bucks can't afford to do that. They have to go with their best 8, and they have to go at the Nets. You've got to take advantage when Blake Griffin is down there in the paint. Brook Lopez has to get on the glass, like he did a lot in this game. I think this series isn't over, especially because, like I said, the Bucks shot 6 for 30 from 3, and it was an 8-point loss, given it was more out of hand than that before they cut it in kind of garbage time minutes, but it was only an 8-point loss. It could have been way worse. The Nets had some great ball movement tonight, and it looked like they were in rhythm. Maybe the Bucks, after not playing for a little bit longer than the Nets, which is something I thought would be an advantage for them, turned into a disadvantage by the fact that they were kind of out of rhythm. They weren't in practice. So, what do I expect for next game? I expect, or if I was Mike Budenholzer, I would hope that I would play more starters. I would play my starters more minutes. I would limit the bench, and I would do whatever I can to attack the Nets in the paint there. You've got to take advantage of those paint opportunities. The Nets did a good job of trying to make a wall in front of Giannis, and it really didn't even work a lot of the time. Giannis was just that good tonight. His teammates really just didn't step up. And if they're going to wall off Giannis, the Bucks have to be able to hit those outside shots. If they're not hitting their outside shots, this series is over. It's up to guys like Bryn Forbes. It's up to Pat Connaughton. It's up to Chris Middleton. Like I said, someone who I praised a ton going into this game to be better going forward. As for the Nets, this is a big win for them. Winning without James Harden is big for this Nets team. He's a guy who's kind of proven himself to be a necessity on this roster over the course of this season. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant missed a lot of time, and in that time, James Harden established himself a lot of times as the leader of this team. He's someone that I'm sure they missed dearly out there on the court tonight. And it didn't matter because the guys knew what they had to do. They stepped up. Mike James stepped up. Kevin Durant stepped up and played more minutes. Kyrie Irving sat for 3 minutes this whole game. And he won. They won. He didn't even look tired. He looked good. So, big win for the Nets. I did pick the Nets in 7 in this series, but I do think the Bucks aren't going to go out without a fight. I think the Bucks come back and take one of the next 2 games, if not 2 of them. I think the Bucks are going to fight. I do still have the Nets in this series, and I think tonight kind of proved why I have the Nets in this series. It's just tough to overcome when you have so many good players on this roster, specifically Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I, however, thought the Nets were going to get this one with James Harden too, and getting without James Harden is big. The Bucks have their work cut out for them. Don't act like the series is over. We just saw like the Mavericks go up on the Clippers 2-0, and a lot of people were claiming the series was over. And then the Clippers came back, won the next 2, lost 1, and now they're heading to a Game 7 after a Game 6 win. Losing a game or 2 games is not the end of a series. Now, if the Bucks go down 3-0, sure, then we can talk about it. But going into one game, don't overreact too much. I think this is a series that's prone to a lot of overreactions. I tweeted this out earlier because there's so much star power. Giannis, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Chris Middleton, Jrue Holiday. So many stars in this series, as well as 2 higher profile coaches that are under a lot of scrutiny. Steve Nash in his first season, and Mike Budenholzer, a guy that's on the hot seat. So don't overreact too much. Bucks fans, I promise you it's not over, but Nets fans, you should be happy about this win, and you should be really liking what you see from your team going forward. With that being said, I appreciate you guys watching this video. I know this was a lot to say about the first game of this series, but this is my most anticipated series of the playoffs so far, and so I'm really looking forward to this one. I'm hoping it turns out to be a good series and not just the Nets destroying the Bucks like this, I guess, is possible. I don't think it's really that possible, but I just hope it's a good series. I hope we see the series that I'm hoping for. I appreciate you guys watching this video. I will see you guys later. Real one, say it back.